The year is 1806. Napoleon Bonaparte has carved out a massive European empire. Having conquered a multitude of kingdoms, the British are the only remaining threat. To break the hardy English resolve, the emperor creates a trade embargo against the nation. In an effort to revive a collapsing economy, the Russians secretly undermine the French plot. Loathing this deceit, Napoleon launches a full-scale invasion of over 600,000 men. The emperor overlooks one simple fact. No one defeats the Russians in Russia. Welcome to the Generic History Show. Today we investigate Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Bonaparte? It's the Bonaparte guy, not Dynamite. Okay. Could you edit that out, please? Thank you very much. Napoleon Bonaparte. We are investigating Napoleon Bonaparte and his failed invasion of Russia. Fortunately, I am not an expert in this subject, so we're bringing in Ryan Spildorg from Cambridge University.
Good morning.
Good morning to you too, sir.
So, I'm actually professor of all battles within 1 mile of a Siberian lark tree. But that is not relevant here.
Yes, it's not relevant at all, so put all that behind us, forget that ever happened, and get down to the facts. So, around what time was Napoleon reign present, and why was his anger thrown all at the Russians?
Well, in the first decade of the 1800s, Napoleon pretty much conquered all of mainland Europe. He was growing pretty arrogant, and the British were the only nation that really stood in his way. So, he decided to destroy them via the continental system, which was a system of embargoes and economic sanctions against the British. So, the Russians were actually suffering greatly under this. They were suffering for lack of goods from England. So they reopened trade and they had an agreement with the French, and that made the French quite angry.
Oh, sneaky Russians.
Hey, what are you talking about, sneaky Russians, you little white man?
Could you cut that out and shut him up for a bit? My reputation must stay intact. Back to the questions. Alec. Also, what did Napoleon do to counter this revolt?
Well, he tried to convince Alexander I of Russia, the Tsar, and to return to the accepted terms. However, when the Tsar defied Napoleon, he decided to show him who's boss, and brought an army of over 600,000 men, the Grande Armée, to the Russian border.
600,000 men. That's certainly a lot of men. Who was in the army?
A bunch of pansies.
Shut up, Nikolai. Your interview isn't for a while. Security, could you get this man out of here?
Hey, don't touch me, no one grabs the Russian, no.
Okay, so sorry for that. Edit that out as well. We don't want him in there yet. Please continue.
So, the French force was composed of only 200,000 Frenchmen, but the rest of the army was made of, well, people who were coerced into fighting from the conquered nations.
That doesn't sound fun. What was Napoleon's final goal?
He expected an expedient victory, which would instantly force Alexander I to beg for peace. However, the Russians had very different intentions.
Good morning, white man. Let me do some home decorating real quickly.
How'd you get through security?
I came from the roof. Don't worry about it. It's completely safe.
Can we fire the entire security and confiscate these later? He's too scary and trained as an assassin? Fair enough. Okay. Mr. Nikolai, correct?
Yes, Nikolai is correct.
Could you tell me more about the Russian force when Napoleon was invading Russia?
The Russian force when Napoleon was invading Russia was about 200,000 men that we had at the time. But don't worry about us, we know how to fight. We fought bears as children.
I'm pretty sure that's not true. But
Are you questioning me?
No, ignore I said that. How did the Russians fight back against the French?
We fought back to guerrilla tactics. We used a lot of what they did in the Viet Cong. We took We burned bridges to Moscow, and we burned our cities, our weapons caches, and everything that seems important to suit our vodka.
So you left behind your vodka.
Yes, to
Wow.
let them get drunk.
So, okay, that makes sense. And how did this stop the French?
When we left the vodka, we allowed them to get drunk. They also didn't bring the correct apparel for the cold winter that we had. So they froze to death and got wasted.
Okay, and this killed the army,
Mostly.
mostly. And if I'm not correct, you also defeated them at the Battle of Borodino, or was that Napoleon?
Yes, the Battle of Borodino. We won that battle.
You sure?
Now the French will say, oh, we won. No, we won. We kept using guerrilla warfare tactics. We flanked around the right and the left side. Had our artillery push the 12 o'clock. We won that battle.
Since Mr. Nikolai's opinion is clearly biased, here's some more information on the Battle of Borodino to show you who really won. On September 7th, 1812, 70 miles west of Moscow, Napoleon approached the Russians with 130,000 troops versus the Russians' 120,000 troops. In the ensuing battle, 7 musket shots rang and 3 cannons boomed every second. The Russians suffered 45,000 casualties compared to the French's 30,000 casualties. The battle's end was controversial. Though the French had a lower body count and captured Moscow, the Russians had lured the emperor into a trap further into Russia, ended up killing twice as many troops as they had in the first place. Now that we've cleared up some things about the Battle of Borodino, I have a few questions for Nikolai. Okay, my main question, it's quite interesting. What is your favorite way to kill someone?
In combat or in torture?
You choose?
Okay, fine, combat. Keep it clean for children. With a spoon.
Commercial break!
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear.
Russians do not cry. We do not cry.
Got it. Welcome back, Alec. A few more questions for you after that interesting ordeal with that man, Nikolai. He certainly is a very intriguing character.
Yeah, he sounds pretty cool. I should meet him sometime.
So my first question, now that you're back, is what did the French do after the Battle of Borodino?
Well, with the winter bearing down on his men, Napoleon decided to flee with his 100,000 troops. That was all that was left. He was going south.
And did the Russians try to intercept him one more time or not?
Yes, in fact they did. At the Battle of Maloyaroslavets, a very long name, they pretty much forced him back on the route at which he came to Russia, which lengthened the ordeal by quite a bit.
And so I'm assuming in this lengthening, a lot happened to the army.
Yes, it was a very cruel time. They left behind 10,000 of the wounded in order to cross a river and escape the Russians. And hearing of a coup back in Russia, back in France, forgive me for that, Napoleon left his entire army behind to hasten back.
Was Napoleon correct? Was there a coup in Paris?
There was not, but there was a much more formidable foe. The nations of Europe were revolting, hearing of his horrible defeat in Russia. They revolted and aligned against him, and that was the final nail in the coffin of Napoleon. He was defeated and ultimately exiled. And thus began the end of Napoleon's reign. As soon as he returned to Paris, all of the other countries originally allied against him teamed up and defeated him at the Battle of Waterloo. After this battle, Napoleon was exiled to the island of Elba, only to be seen once more, but again defeated. Catch us after the break when we explain more about what happened to Europe after Napoleon's reign.
Hello.
Hi. Boy. Did you just try to argue that the Russians won the Battle of Borodino?
Of course the Russians won the Battle of Borodino.
Really? Because the facts say that that Napoleon ended up defeating the Russians and he took Moscow.
Really, if you look at the original text of what we have written in our libraries, we won. We burned our cities and our bridges and our homes to make you think you won.
But the Russians lost more men in that battle. Napoleon managed to push through them.
Yes, but you lost more men in total. You barely had any of your men arrive home.
But-
You had them arrive in body bags.
But they took Moscow.
Because we allowed you to take Moscow.
Napoleon was a brilliant mastermind. He couldn't have possibly lost Borodino.
No. We won.
There he is! Security! Get him! Okay, this is live now because apparently our editors suck and they accidentally aired the murder of poor Alec Spildork. And so because of that, our airtime was completely cut to 0 now. So we have to give you the sped up version. So here it is. Now, if you really want to know what happened, just remember what you saw in slow motion. Test it on your own recognizance. Thank you for watching the first episode of Generic History Show. See you next week! Oh, we're canceled? Bye!
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this storm.